Hello, this is Andrew with FatOx. I'm here at my home office and I basically wanted to give further context to the claims being made by the insured. This level right here is going to represent our counter flashing, which has been damaged and provided coverage for. And this obviously will represent the shingle that runs underneath said counter flashing. Now, the images provided show that there are fasteners that run through the counter flashing, sealed up with some silicone on the top. But again, this is just for a visual representation of what we're dealing with. I'm hoping I can get this thing to stand up. I'll hold it. So, got our fastener through the counter flashing. In order to remove this counter flashing, fastener needs to come up out of the counter flashing, okay? Represented by this level right here. Counter flashing comes up, remove, replace. What happens when we remove the counter flashing, remove the fasteners from underneath? We're going to exacerbate these fastening holes. Now this isn't from the insured's roof, this is from another one of my insured's roof, about a 20-year-old laminate shingle. You see how that fastener just fell right through? All right, removing a fastener from underneath counter flashing at that, this was just, it came from underneath other shingles, but metal counter flashing, you're going to have to use some effort, right, to remove that fastener. Look at all the play that we have from the back here. Now, is this shingle in its condition it was before the loss? I'm hoping you can see that on the camera and see it fall through here. Objectively, no. The shingle is ripped, right? Now, if we weren't bound by the principle of indemnification, it may be acceptable to, when we replace, before we replace with new counter flashing, to just seal these exacerbated fastening holes up with some silicone or some roof caulk. Say that we're doing a DIY project, the homeowner, we're just doing this on their own. But because we are bound by the principle of indemnification, it's objectively unacceptable. The question is the shingle in the condition it was before the loss? That's a rhetorical question. Of course it is. So before this can go back on, this shingle needs to get replaced, right? I guess a comparable example would be when roofers are using toe boards or roof jack systems when they're installing shingles on very steep slopes. What they'll do is install a 2x6 and they'll use that as a foothold basically, so they can stand on something. They'll nail that 2x6 into the shingle, right, and stand on it. And after they're done installing, when they come back off the roof, they'll take that nail out of the 2x6, take the 2x6 with them, of course, and there's a little nail hole left behind the shingle. It is recommended that shingle get replaced. Oftentimes when you see roof leaks, it's from shingles that didn't get replaced because a toe board was installed there at one point, and the roofer just went ahead, they did the lazy thing, sealed it up with some silicone or some roof caulk, which doesn't have the same longevity as a sound shingle does, objectively. And so it is applicable to this situation. Let's say that we remove the old flashing, right? Take your fastener out, remove the old flashing, fill these up with some silicone, and then we put some new new flashing back on top, go in some new a new hole, right? Well, what happens if this isn't a tight bond, right? What happens even if we put some roof caulk or some silicone in there and that eventually fails after a year or two or three, right? And then some wind-driven rain gets underneath this counter flashing and it gets into these holes that were filled up because, oh, good enough, right? Well, that's going to be a prime cause for leaking, okay? So the main point that I would really love to drive home to the carrier is to acknowledge that when we remove this counter flashing, when we remove the fastener from the shingle, take that all up, these underlying fastening holes are going to rip the shingle, which is considerably aged, right? That is no longer pre-loss condition right there. To state otherwise is impossible. Now, the general statutes of South Carolina obligate the insurer to basically tell me otherwise, right? or disprove the claim being made by the insured. And to this point, you haven't. We just get, frankly, rude responses stating that you're not going to change coverage, but you haven't substantiated your position. So please do so. Otherwise, provide coverage for the shingles underneath the counterflashing. Thank you.